I was getting ready to get in a car after a lowrider show in Las Vegas. I got caught up in a drive-by and I got shot 3 times. I was getting ready to get into a personal vehicle, had a bus that we were touring in, and a good friend of mine was out there with me and getting ready to get in his car. And, it was him, his wife, and his 2 kids. And next thing you know, I heard just bullets ringing out. Got hit 3 times in both my legs. I had a through and through on my left leg. I had a through and through on my right, and one that stayed in my right leg.
Welcome back to the Invest in Yourself podcast. Today I'm joined by a man of many past lives, such as being a drug dealer, car thief, ex-military, and former rap artist. His name is Hondo Underwood. You may have recently seen him on a major platform called Business Insider on their segment called How Crime Works. I decided to bring him on to cover his in-depth story, raw and uncut. Hondo breaks down his life as a criminal, going on high-speed chases, and almost losing his life after being shot. Hondo has completely turned his life around after being locked up. Please subscribe to my channel for more interviews like this, and without further ado, let's get into Hondo's story. All right, welcome back to the Invest in Yourself podcast. I got a really cool guest on today. Some of you may have seen him on Insider or How Crime Works, and that's where I came across him. And he's got a really good story, and he was involved with crime and he changed his life around. And of course, that's what my podcast is all about. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And Hondo, thank you for coming on the podcast today, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, yeah, no doubt, man. I'm glad we were able to come in contact. I mean, you got right back to me pretty quick.
Yeah, definitely been responding and trying to get where I can.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I think the best way to get into your story is to start from the beginning. And what it was it like for you growing up, and was crime always around you, and how did all this your story before you got into crime and stuff, you were in the military. So what was it like? What was your upbringing?
So growing up, my parents split up probably about when I was about 2 years old. Didn't spend too much time with my father. I was always with my mom. My dad was in and out of jail, just doing different things. So my mom kind of kept me distance from him for just those reasons. Uh, Growing up, I ended up growing up with my mom and my now little brother's dad. He was a crack addict. He was addicted to crack and cocaine and things like that. So pretty pretty abusive. There was good times, but the majority of memories were bad times. He was verbally abusive, mentally abusive, physically abusive, things like that. So I growing up, I was kind of sheltered myself. Didn't really like to have friends over, or couldn't have friends over. Didn't attend school functions or things like that. I played sports growing up, but it wasn't, you know, the it was more or less like the out out my outways to what was going on at home. So quite a bit of abuse growing up. When I finally started getting to see my dad and stuff like that, I was probably about 8 years old. So I'd see him every other weekend, things like that. When I started seeing him, I got in, kind of uh, kind of got in touch with gangs and things like that. So getting into that, it felt like I had a kind of like a sense of power, so I can kind of stick up for myself, being bullied or things like that, and the abuse at home. So it was definitely nice to have that kind of support. You know,
So
um,
the
Go ahead.
gangs that you were around this age, the gangs that you were around, like did you end up going and becoming a member of them, or how did that work in the beginning?
So growing up, uh, it was more or less like the little homie that grew up with all the older guys. I didn't hang out with people from school. I hang out with the neighborhood, and they kind of took me under their wing. Even though I'd go see my dad, it was he was out doing his thing, but it was a lot more freedom over there. So I had a lot more lax structure over there, so I can go hang out with them and hanging out with lowriders and pit bulls and guns and sipping 40 ounces and things like that. So that's more or less what I kind of like attracted to, because it was the father figure, that was there, but the father figure that I kind of lacked as well as far as structure wise.
Yeah. So it really that was like kind of your turn on to this criminal element, in other words, right?
Correct. It was kind of
Yeah.
like not I don't want to call it a fallback, but my home plate.
Yeah. And for you, when you were growing up and as you continued to, were you at your dad's quite a bit and being around all these people?
So I ended up moving in with my dad in high school, and so I always kept good contact with them. They were like, you could do stuff, you can be better, this and this and that. Like, so it wasn't they weren't influencing me to do crime and things like that. They didn't push me to do certain things, but it was just being around that part of life that I was attracted to. I like the tattoos, I like the kicking it with everybody and cookouts, and I just like the atmosphere of it all. The respect that they had for each other. I guess in a sense, kind of seeing the fear that was instilled in me, I was able to instill that in somebody else by having that. You know.
Yeah. And for you, as you continued to go down this path, did you start committing crimes at this young age?
No, I didn't. I didn't start committing crimes. Growing up with them, they like I said, they always pushed me to do good. When I graduated from high school, they were there showing me support and proud of me, and they threw me like a little graduation party and things like that. So very you know they were celebrating my achievements as well, right along with me. So it was backup, but it almost became like a like family.
Hmm. And then you ended up going into the military. So what led to that?
So I just when I graduated from high school, um, I really, really wasn't into really knowing what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to go to school again, but I was kind of, I guess, lost in a sense. I had some structure by going to school and by hanging out with everybody that I was, but it wasn't something to make a life of. Like I didn't know what I wanted to be. So one day I was sitting at home. At this time, I was living with my dad. And I got a call from my mom, and she's like, "Hey, a recruiter called me," and I was like, "Okay, for what?" She said, "I don't know. He's a recruiter for the Marine Corps." So I called him back, and that next day he came and picked me up and kind of went and hung out. And he told me about the program and things like that. And I was like, "All right, let's do it." So I took the pre-ASVAB, and something had happened with the computer to where it didn't save my results. So I took it again, rushed through it, failed it, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to give you a week. Here's the ASVAB book. I want you to come back and try it again." So I came back, passed it, flying colors. Um, so I joined the Marine Corps 2007, December 3rd of 2007 is when I went to boot camp. Going through boot camp, I made it through. It was a good time, things like that. Uh, I ended up getting married and divorced in the same year. My ex-wife had a daughter and pretty much just took her from me. So for me, it was like there was always like these ups and there was downs throughout my life. This was my uh, first kind of up. And so before I joined the Marine Corps, before I graduated, my sister passed away a week after she turned two by
Yeah.
a freak accident. She choked on a malted milk ball. So that was really my first down. So then when I joined the Marine Corps and I got married, I was like, okay, set it up to where we have a on base housing, things like that. And she was supposed to move out there with me. Well, then she was like, nope, I'm not doing it. Then she admitted that she was cheating on me the whole time. So I had to go through DNA testing with all that. So it was like I got hit again. And it kind of revolved around kids at this point. So I was like, whatever. So it was a big custody battle and things like that. Obviously, I was stationed in North Carolina. My wife was in Colorado at the time, so there was really nothing I can do other than finish out my time in the Marine Corps and come back home. So during the time of me finishing out my time in the Marine Corps, she went MIA, changed numbers, changed address, everything. There was no contact at all.
There.
I was paying $729 a month in child support and didn't get to see my daughter. So it was a pretty big hit. So when I got out of the military, my initial plan was, get back in contact with my daughter, things like that. And so when I got out, again, I kind of felt that sense of being lost, just like when I graduated. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I, you know, kind of had ideas, but really didn't know. So I got an opportunity to go on a music tour. So started, going on tour, state to state, things like that, hanging out with some pretty big names. Um, and it was cool. I had a lot of fun doing it until September 21st of 2014. I was getting ready to get in a car after a lowrider show in Las Vegas, and I got caught up in a drive-by and I got shot 3 times.
Damn. Can
So,
you
so
break
when I
that
got
down? Can you break that
so
situation down?
so I was getting ready to get into a personal vehicle. Um, had a bus that we were touring in. And it kind of happened so quick, that really don't even know. A good friend of mine was out there with me and getting ready to get in his car. It was him, his wife, and his 2 kids. And next thing you know, I heard just bullets ringing out and got hit 3 times in both my legs. I had a through and through on my left leg. I had a through and through on my right, and one that stayed in my right leg. So it it kind of put me out a little bit. So when I had got shot, my dad ended up coming to Las Vegas to me and picking me up and bringing me back to Colorado. And then again, it was like, I was wanted by all these fans and, all this, kind of like celebrity living, I guess, so to say. And, it was living the good life. So then when I came back and at this point, I couldn't walk on my own. I was on a walker and, crutches, things like that, going through rehab and still having a bullet in my leg at this point. I was just like, I really don't really know what to do with myself. You know, I can go
Did
back on tour or I can just kind of wait it out.
did you find out why you were shot or what the whole situation was with it? Why that even came about?
So the record label that I was affiliated with was gang related. Um, and so more or less it's along the lines that it was just kind of, maybe it was an initiation to another gang, rivals, whatever it may be. It is what happened.
Damn. So it wasn't nothing personal to you then. It was just
No,
oh. So for you,
just
like, what? How did that make you feel after you got shot like that? What? Because now you're in the thinking what you want to do next.
so when I had got shot, it was, I mean, it was the life I was living. It was the people I was involved in. It was almost in a sense expected to happen, or there was those possibilities. I knew what I signed up for, and at the time, it is what it is. So when I came back home, I felt like I was lost again. I always had this because growing up, when you go through trauma of being mentally abused and things like that, I kind of lost that sense of I feel wanted or I feel needed. Like, what do I want to do? So I became a Marine to feel needed again. I joined uh, a record label because I felt needed. So when I got out, I was like, well, what do I do? I really don't have a purpose or direction in life of what I want to do. So at that point, I kind of reverted back to childhood, and I, got clicked up with different neighborhoods, and I started selling dope. I was selling cocaine, and during that time, weed really wasn't the thing. So started selling coke, and doing all right for myself. Just kind of living life, getting by, and then everything with the border shut down and things like that. So I got introduced to meth and it was like, it's cheaper, it lasts longer, it's easy to get, it's everywhere. So I said, all right, I'll try it. So instead of doing a line of coke, I did a line of meth.
Damn.
Started selling it, doing it. Everybody around me was like, it was something that people need consistently. So it was an everyday thing. It was just go, 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 and money, this, that. So um, again, I felt kind of like that sense, in kind of a crooked way of being needed. It was just the want of feeling wanted, I guess. and it it was good while it lasted. And then like everything you do, as far as drugs or crime, you feel like you can control it until it comes to the points where you can't control it. It controls you. So once I started using it, I started getting into other aspects of crime rather than just selling drugs. I was I started stealing cars. Excuse me, I got to sneeze. So I started stealing cars and selling them to other. At this point, I wasn't just involved in the neighborhood that I grew up with. I was involved with any and every neighborhood. At this point, it was business is business. So I would work with you. If you were good, I was good, and it is what it is. So I started stealing cars. Initially, I was really into like keys. Jiggler keys were my thing. Like I got into like picking locks and doing just odd and end things like that. And then I met up with a guy, and he had a whole bunch of keys, and I'm like, it was almost like kids playing Pokemon cards. They were, oh well, check this key out or check this out, and then it was like, you know what? Well, let's put it to the test. Let's go. I found somebody of interest that was interested in the same things that I was. So we went
And
out, and he started teaching me different techniques.
what kind of
It
keys
was
you said they were? They were, what do you call them? Jingling keys, or
they call them jiggler keys or bump keys. Pretty
so?
much
What does
keys
it
that are
mean?
they're pretty much keys that are shaved down that you could open up pretty much any lock. It's a house lock, a door lock, car lock, ignitions, anything really. Um, Highly illegal. That
Yeah.
they're burglary tools, but I was fascinated with them. So I started using those, and then that guy was like, "Hey, this is an easier way." I'm like, "All right, I'll try it out." So I started trying that out, and I'm like, "Oh, cool. This is quick." So kind of threw out the jiggler keys and kind of went on my own way and uh, found out how to get more proficient at it on my own. So then people were like, "Hey, I need a G rad for this. I need one for this." And during that time, the big thing was like shingles. People were stealing shingles because it was easy money. Everybody was getting their roofs repaired and things like that. So people would be like, "Hey, I need a truck." So they'd get a truck and go do what they did, made money. So it was it was a different kind of high for me. The drug isn't what I was addicted to at that time. It was getting the vehicles that got me addicted. The drug was just something to keep me up to do it longer and more proficiently and more alert.
So you did have an addiction to doing crime, then more mainly was your addiction.
Yeah, well, that's what the addiction led into. I mean,
Yeah.
I get obviously it had some influence on me starting that, getting into that aspect of crime, but it was something that I was like, I like the adrenaline rush of getting a vehicle,
Well,
so
if you could
with
explain that feeling, what does that feeling feel like? What that rush?
I mean, it was like an adrenaline rush. People jump out of helicopters or airplanes or things like that. It was kind of just that rush for me that I was more or less like, oh yeah, let's do this. It's the I guess the fear of getting caught, but also, oh, that's a nice vehicle, or how fast does this go, or kind of like a challenge. When you're hanging out with a circle of people like that, like it's like, look at the truck that I just got. Can you do that? So it was almost like a contest to see who was better and who can get better things or the better car or things like that.
Well, when you were first doing this, when you'd steal the cars and then you would go and sell them, would you just take them to a chop shop, or how would that work?
At first, I was just taking them to people on the streets. People would call me up, hey, I need a truck for this or whatever. And 9 times out of 10, the people that would call me for it were also not just associated with me; they were associated with other people. So whether or not they would go and flip the vehicle or whatever they do with it, I always had a consistent, I guess, network that came to me, whether or not, maybe they totaled it, maybe they, sold it or whatever, they were coming back saying, hey, I need another one. Maybe the cops found that one or somebody got caught in it or whatever the case may be. It was a consistent income to where they were saying, "Hey, I need another one. I need another one."
Yeah, and then when you would get more deeper in this, like, how long was your run with this? Wasn't it like a year or two with the car stealing?
So I got shot in 2014. I got apprehended in 2017. So
Okay,
in
so you had a
between
couple
in
years.
between that, yeah, in between that time, it was, I had, at first it wasn't like I was doing it daily or anything like that. It was here and there, and then after, more towards the end, it was pretty often or pretty frequent that I was getting vehicles. You know,
And oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. In 2017, um, they actually caught me on camera, and it was the first time they caught me on camera. It was a 2002 Dodge Ram Cummins diesel. It had a trailer in the back of it, and they caught me on camera pulling up in, one of my acquaintances' cars. Got out of the passenger side, jumped in the back window. I pretty much told him, I said, "Hey, take that trailer off. I don't want the trailer. It's just too much baggage." So he said, "All right." So he starts jacking up the trailer, with the little wheel or whatever. And I was in the truck and started the truck before he could even get it jacked up. So at that point, I was like, "You know what? Just pull the pin on the hitch, and just let go." And he's like, "What do you mean?" So I jumped out of the truck. I pulled the pin, jumped back in the truck, did a 360, and spun the trailer out of the hitch, and off I went. So when they caught me, they knew that it was me for the speed and how quick it was.
So when they started their investigation on you, is this kind of when they first started looking into you? You think when with the whole car ring?
Oh yeah. So um, I knew that I was wanted. There was, went on multiple high speed chases, sometimes a few in a day, multiple times a day, every other day. It was at least once a week that I was getting a high speed chases.
Dang.
This particular vehicle I had for quite a while. So it was a couple months, I believe, that I had this vehicle. So they knew that it was me. They knew what I looked like. There was people cops looking out for me, and there was times where the cops would pull up and I'd flip them off or throw gang signs at them, and just take off. Because
Damn.
they knew I wasn't going to stop. So, but during that time, in Colorado, they're not supposed to do high speed chases. If it puts anybody in the community or residential areas at risk, then they can't really pursue you. And I knew this. There was times where they did pursue me or tried to, or there'd be a cop here and two cops over there and three cops over there, and I'd just kind of shake them off and keep going. So I knew that they were after me. Um, the area that I was living at was pretty close knit. It was low income, things like that. So everybody knew everybody. I had kids coming up to me like, "Hey, there's an undercover over there taking pictures," or you know, "They're watching the truck over there. Don't go to it," or So the neighborhood really looked out for each other. But on the same hand, even though I was involved in crime, if somebody or a family says, "Hey, I'm behind on rent," well, here you go. I had the money. I had a team that would make the money, and bam, we'd pay their rent. So they kind of respected us, even though that they knew that we were doing dirty things. Um,
Were you
it
doing
was
it in
it
their
was
area or outside of your home area?
no, it was outside. I
Oh,
never did it where I was at, because those are the people that took care of me.
yeah.
In a sense. So if the cops were coming, they'd be like, "Hey, I don't know, I haven't seen him," and I'd be sitting in their house, or things like that. So it was giving back to a neighborhood that had nothing. There was kids that, "Oh, well, I need a new tire for my bike. Well, let's go get it." So from all ages, kids all the way up to parents, they had a respect for us, for me, by doing the things that I was doing, even though it was wrong. It was a way of them being able to live and be successful.
What is one of the most advanced ways you broke into a car?
I never really got into anything like electronic or anything like that. My thing was always flatheads and screwdrivers and vice grips. I used to like the older vehicles, the F-350s, the Suburbans, the Dodge Rams. The bigger the vehicle, the more stuff it can carry. The bigger the vehicle, more chances that the cops won't hit it in a pit maneuver. So I like things that were faster that I can get away in, but also it wasn't doing small crime in. You know what I'm saying? You could only do so much in a car rather than an F-350 with a bunch of tools or rims or whatever the case may be. Whatever items you were getting or obtaining.
So when you let me think. So how would you go into and rob these? Like just how you would use these two tools? Like it seems pretty fairly simple. I don't know if you want to break down and explain it. Maybe not so much because you don't want to encourage people to go out there. But like I don't know, in some kind of way, like you would just initially just somehow use these tools to get inside the car, and then you would just drive off. And then would the car alarm go off, or like were these things happening? Like were people seeing you?
Um, so during those times, car alarms were a thing, but there was ways to bypass it. You click your if you have a key and you click your key, two times to unlock, it disarms your alarm system. So in a sense, it was cheaply designed alarms,
Mhm.
that were easily bypassed without using a key fob or things like that. So for me, it was pretty simple. F-350s. They during that time they were one of the biggest stolen types of vehicles that was out. Just because they are so easy. The door handles are easy to break off. The security systems just aren't built or designed to really be any good.
Well, when you would after you would start, were you dealing with any other organizations or like when you got deeper into this? Because I mean, you started doing a lot of them. Like I think from the insider thing, you said you maybe did 200 to 300 cars in a couple years span. So what were you doing? Like, can you talk about that much?
Um, so there was times where we'd send them, to El Paso to go across the border and pretty much just wash our hands. Whatever the order was, I didn't uh, I didn't get too deep into it. It was for me, it was fulfilling orders. It wasn't oh, I want to go and work with these people or those people, but it was associates that were involved and things like that. So it's once you get into the drug world, there's always one place, or the majority of the time, one place that it comes from. So when you get
Mhm.
into selling and then you get into crime, there's other ways to get the drugs or things like that. There's other ways to get money outside of drug dealing. There's guns, there's vehicles, there's if you could think of it, you could name it. You know what I'm saying? Um, there's there's thousands of ways to make money with certain organizations, things like that. So there was times where we would send them to El Paso and or to New Mexico, things like that, Arizona. So for me, once I got into that aspect of it, it was like, oh, you're gonna pay. I was easy money on the street. I'd get $200. Now you're talking. You want me to drive a vehicle to El Paso? We're gonna up that money. And so it was an easy way to wash my hands clean of it, but also get a good chunk of money from it as well.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna go into next. Was like, how would you set your prices for certain cars and stuff like that?
For me, like if somebody told me, hey, this is what we're gonna do, if I knew that they were gonna make a good chunk of money out of it, that price is gonna go up. Or if it was a specific type of vehicle that I knew that they wanted, then the price would go up. If it was, hey, just get me whatever, I'd sell it for $200 easy. And when you think about the crime aspect of it, it's like you don't think about who it's affecting. It's just the easy money for you to obtain. So it's selfish to do. Looking back now, realizing that yes, it's very selfish. But during that time when, you know, you really don't have anything, it's providing for somebody or something.
What is the most that you've made off of one of these cars?
I probably made like 10,000. I think was
Damn.
my highest.
Yeah. And so, I
So.
mean, and that's a lot, especially for as many as you did during that time. So, I mean, you added up and stuff like that. But,
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, it is kind of crazy how even we all just continue to learn and, better ourselves and get out of that. So, whatever it
Hmm.
may be, it might not even be crime, but everyone's different. Like you just said, like you think back and, you realize it's just, something selfish that you have done. And I'm sure it's probably pretty weird looking back at yourself now. It's because it's been how many years now? Like 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years.
Hmm.
So I mean,
Well, it's since 2017, so
yeah. So yeah, I'm a little over that. I
about
mean, how do you?
7 years.
I mean, how do you feel about all this now?
So looking back, so after I got arrested, um, they put me in a Jefferson County jail, and they soon afterwards released me to pretrial services, and they released me, I believe, on a Friday, and my ankle box died on a Sunday. The first time that I can meet with pretrial was Tuesday. When I walked in, they already had sheriffs there to arrest me because
Damn.
my box died for literally like an hour.
Jeez.
So I was like, man, so it sucked. Um, but so I sat down for a while, and when I got in there, it was like, I started seeing people that I was involved with, and they were locked up, and it's, oh, how you doing, this and that, and so I always kind of had like somewhat of a leadership role, or somebody can come to or talk to, or kind of like a mentor. So when I was arrested and I was in Jefferson County, they threw out this proposition where they're going to try to create a veterans unit that was only veterans can be housed there, and the deputies that overseen that unit were also veterans. So we had a big old meeting within the jail. All the veteran inmates went up there, and obviously they had to have it, background screened, that yes, you're a veteran, things like that. So for like 2 weeks, I was in this unit by myself because they literally moved everybody out. And I was like, "Wow, this is cool." Like the deputies were already there, like easy unit to look over. There's one person in there. I was attached to two other units through glass. Um, so it was pretty cool. I was cleaning cells and just kind of doing my own thing. They'd give me extra food here and there or whatever. And then we started the veterans unit, and we had jail counselors that would come in and teach different classes, healthy relationships, setting boundaries. One that I talked about in on Insider was toxic masculinity. A lot of people look down on that, like, oh, well, what is that? Well, it's pretty much little man syndrome. People just, it's just a different attitude. There was amending relationships and things like that. So uh, it was definitely pretty helpful, going through that with other veterans, especially when we got into a class called MRT. Um, MRT is pretty much like a class that's book based, and there's somebody who leads the class. And pretty much what it does is makes you break down all your bad times of childhood and progressing all the way through your life as to where what led you to here, what impacts did it have, things like that. So going through that class, there was a deputy, and he didn't just lead the class; he did the class with us. So it was nice because as an inmate or a criminal, you don't always get to see a police officer take his time out and say, hey, this is my life. This is why I became a police officer. So being able to build that bond with the police officer on a more, on kind of like a relationship, like outside of jail. He didn't treat us like inmates. He was opening up to us and expecting us to open up as well. And it wasn't for the group that we opened up, it was for ourselves to get to know ourselves. So if you're honest with yourself, you get to know more about yourself. So that's pretty much the lesson that it took place in. Um, but it was nice being able to relate to another veteran. They always say like, when you put a veterans in a group or in a room full of veterans that have never met, they'll always start talking like they've known each other for years. And it's the truth. So jail was I've never experienced jail the way that I did in the veterans unit for that reason. That we were held to a higher standard. Our cells had to be cleaned and things like that. The lieutenant and the chief would come in and check on us, and we were getting classes and things like that. We were made into trustees even though we weren't sentenced to the county jail. Um, so it was more or less, not just jail. It was kind of a rehabilitation. And for me, that's the part that started me off was, jail. People look at jail like it's a punishment. Yes, it is a punishment, but how do people expect for people to change their lives when there's no rehab while you're in jail? They're going to
Right.
release you back to what you know, unless there's some kind of resources set in place or the root of the problem that's found. So while I was locked up, I reached out to the auto theft team that arrested me. And I told them, through the lieutenant of the jail, I said, I want to do some kind of a class where I can teach those those detectives how I stole vehicles, what I did with them, what types I would target, things like that. So I did. They took me down in shackles to a conference room, and you know, I uh, I sat there with them and went through everything. There was an incident where I pulled a cop gun on an undercover cop that was following me, and they did remember that situation and things like that. So, it
Oh.
was at that point it was also kind of showing my appreciation for being apprehended
Hmm.
because the route that I was going down, I was exhausted, I was tired, but I had no other way out. I didn't know what to do. You know, people want easy things. They want easy ways in life. And my easy way was just to keep doing that. It wasn't, oh, well, I can go to this rehab facility and just walk in and everything's going to be good. There's more loopholes to life than just getting immediate, satisfaction from anything. So I did that. And then, there was going through court, I got offered to go through Veterans Treatment Court, which is pretty much a drug court for veterans, intense supervised probation. Um, it's made up of four phases. The first phase, you go to court every week. Second phase, every other week. Third phase, every 3 weeks, so on and so forth. So when I got released from jail this time after being sentenced to Veterans Treatment Court, um, again, I pretty much got kicked out of jail and back to the same old things that I was doing. So it wasn't long, about a week or two, I was back to getting high and doing the same old thing. So I started dropping hot UAs because, it was 2, 3 UAs a week that we were having to take and dropped a couple hot UAs, did an overnight, did community service, and then they were like, screw this. You're getting placed into a home. So they put me into Harbor Lights Rehab Facility. It's it's through Salvation Army. So it was cool. It was a 3 month program for veterans, and there's also regular civilian, that can go there. But the first month was complete blackout. Couldn't leave the facility. No cell phones. No nothing like that. Second month you can leave with a buddy. Third month you can leave on your own, and then you graduate. So going through there, I started, connecting with some of the other guys there and kind of being like a mentor, I guess you could say, like a peer mentor. And so from there, I started kind of taking on the role like this is what I want to do. I want to help others that were in my situation. I graduated from the program. I still live there. During that time, um, I was going to church with my mom, my stepdad, things like that. So at this point, this is when it really my life really took a turn, because now I'm not going back to the same things that I was doing before. Now I'm more on a positive level. I want to help people. I want to give back. I want to make up for all the times that I've done wrong. So, I went to church one night and, I was like, I was still lost in the sense I was alone. I came from a broken home. I pretty much in a sense lost my family in the military, so I still wanted a family, and building those relationships with my mom, things like that. It was good for me, but it was still like I want something more, So at this time I wasn't really spiritual or anything like that. I wasn't, even today I can't say, oh, I'm so holy. I go to church every week, and I don't, but when when you're weak, and you're going to church and you're asking for blessings, this and that, you know, it's crazy how things work. I came home one night and I was like, what am I gonna do? So I called up my boys and I was like, hey, where are you guys at? And these are guys that are in the rehab facility with me. We had a 10 o'clock curfew, things like that. So they're like, we're downtown. So I went downtown and met up with them, and I posted a picture on my Instagram. Then I get a message saying, hey, one of your boys just tried, hollering at me and my girls. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. And I was like, so you follow our music? Why didn't you say what's up? And she's like, oh, I don't know, blah, blah. So I started looking on her Instagram, and I see this girl that she's with. And I was like, dang, I kind of like her. She's cool. She looks good. So I reached out, and she started coming down to see me every weekend. She lived in a different city, a couple hours away. And so she'd come down to see me. And next thing you know, she's pregnant. She's pregnant with twins.
Damn.
So I was like, all right, so um, we ended up getting married, and we've been doing good, have twins, they're, now it's back to that perfect family life. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I still kept in contact with the police officers that apprehended me. So during that time, I've always, checked in with them, because they don't always get to see the aftermath of what happened. It's
Right.
just another arrest.
Hmm.
So to me, I wanted to prove that point, not just to those police officers or to myself, but to others that just because you commit crimes, um, and it don't even have to be committing crimes. It could be um, kids, lying on a test. It could be anything. You know, no matter what the negative is that you do in life, your negativity from your past doesn't have to define who you are today. So I kept in contact with them, and I invited them to our wedding, and they showed up, and they had a good time. They were there when I graduated from Veterans Treatment Court, things like that. So when I moved out of Denver, I still kept in contact with them, and now it's like we'll check in, things like that. So for me, finding kind of like my avenue of helping people at first, and then meeting my wife, it still gave me that sense of this is where you belong, helping people, help people from your past, by living through experience. You got counselors that are taught the book, but you got people that have lived that life, that have actually been through it. You can't teach the real actual knowledge of being in those situations. Only
Right.
those people can relate to those people on a more than a top level,
Right.
more than just book, more than just college. You know, those people could only do so much for people like that. So my outreach was towards those people, and to show the community that just because you're a felon or you have a criminal history doesn't make you a bad person. You can be a good father and a good husband. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I started working with a couple nonprofit organizations for veterans. Um, I've made different appearances going to Veterans Treatment Court and talking to some of the people who are currently going through court, and kind of telling them my story. Like, hey, you know what? Nobody thought I was going to do it. I didn't even have faith in myself to do it. But once you start working a program and just, kind of relaxing, getting into, okay, they're making me do this, But once you give into it and say, hey, you know what, they're making me do this, I'm just gonna do it on my own and just suck it all in. You know, once you start living that way and start understanding why they're forcing you to do it, it's kind of like when your parents say, don't walk around the house with scissors in your hand, or don't run around the house with scissors in your hand. When you fall, you're gonna hurt yourself. But when you pay attention and listen to what they're saying, you're gonna be pretty safe.
Right.
So that's kind of where what I grasped and I took in for myself.
Hondo, I think that's really good. You really came full circle, and I could tell the way that you feel about the things that you did in your past. You're not, happy with what they were, but like you said, anyone can make a change if they want to, and they can turn that negative into a positive. Because by you doing this stuff with the police and cops now, and giving them the information on how you did these things and why you look for certain cars in certain areas and stuff like that, and I think it helps them out. I mean, of course, if it never happened in the first place, then it wouldn't have happened or whatnot. But you can't change the past. All you can do is move forward, and the things that you've done are pretty good, man. They're pretty great that you went and try and helped out, even with the veterans doing this nonprofit stuff, man. And I think you've the way that how we started this interview. The guy that you talked about back then is completely different from the one I'm talking to, like, right now. I mean, you have really came full circle, man, and from that insider interview that you've done, I always like listening to them because a lot of the people that they do interview truly have changed their life around, and they do their homework and everything like that. So I thought I looked you up too, and I seen the articles that were out about you and stuff. So I was like, wow, this guy really has changed. So let me reach out to him and see if we can line up a podcast because your words, your story, and everything that you've went through in life is just living proof, man, that you can change your life around. And look how long it took you, though. And that's what I'm saying. It's never too late to make a change, man. And now look at the things that you've accomplished. You got a family, and I believe you said you had a wife and stuff still, too. So, and you're working and everything. It's just never give up hope. I mean, that's what I can kind of think when let's look at your story, man.
And it's also nice to know, for instance, like Jelly Roll. A lot of people listen to his music. A lot of people can relate to his music. Nowadays, it's so often that even if somebody doesn't have a criminal history, they know somebody who does.
Right.
And felons and drug addicts and things like that do have a bad rap because they go back to using drugs, and we had this perfect life and they go back to using drugs and things like that. But not always is that the case. There's some people that can pull through it, and just like Jelly Roll said, it's no one's too far gone. And it's the truth, and it's kind of a point that I want to get across to everybody is that just because you have a past does not define the person you are today. Now I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a coach, I'm a foreman, I have a legit license. A funny story is, um, me and my wife went to get my a vehicle for me, and my tags came in, things like that. So I put my stickers on my car, and the paperwork that the stickers came on, I threw it away. And I think a couple hours later, she's like, "Hey, you put your registration in your glove box, right?" I said, "What is that?" And
Damn.
she's like, "Where's the paperwork that you put your that the sticker came on?" I said, "I threw it away." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "The sticker that I put on the license plate, I threw away." And she's like, "That's your registration." Well, I never knew that. There was a lot of things in life that I didn't know. So it's small things like that. There's a lot of things that we're not taught. And if somebody can teach you how to do something, somebody had to teach me how to use drugs. Somebody had to teach me to steal cars. Somebody had to teach me that I can take my past and my traumas and help somebody else out with it. Somebody had to teach me how to be a father and how to be a husband. A lot of that is kudos to my wife for being that support. You know what I'm saying? And it's nice to know that our family supports us, supported her in making the decision. It's not easy to be a straight arrow person and be with somebody who's a convicted felon or a former drug user, because there is a lot of doubt. There's a lot of doubt that people have about these individuals. But when you have somebody who's strong minded and strong willed, anybody can help somebody change. All it takes is one person. Whether that started out with the officers that apprehended me, the officers that were above me when I was incarcerated, my parole officer, the district attorneys, um, the prison counselors, things like that. There's a long list, but all it takes is one person to say, "Hey, you know what? I have faith in this person. Let me see what this person can do."
Yeah.
So for me, that's where my life has changed. And now for me, I'll get on as many podcasts as I can and things like that. A lot of people ask me, "Why are you doing these things for free?" Because to me, I'm not doing it for free. It may be free in the sense of I'm not getting paid for it. Business Insider, they flew me and my wife out to New York, paid for flights, paid for the hotel, everything, you
There.
know, and it was nice because that in itself was an experience. My wife, who built me to be the person I am today and pulled me from those dark places, gave me a reason to be the man I am, you know, got to experience this with me. Got to sit in a room and watch the interview live, unedited, uncut versions, you know, and it's nothing that I hide from her. She knows what I've done, my past and things like that. So for her to be able to experience that, on top of just our own experiences, I'm not doing it for free trips or things like that. My thing is the more people that I can reach through stories of my life and proving to other people that have doubt in themselves that, hey, I can't do this. I know you can do it, because I was one of those people that said, I'll never quit the drugs. I'll never quit, you know, being into stealing vehicles, and I'll never have anything. I won't have a driver's license. I'll always be running from the cops. I like the gang life, the fast life, but there was something more to it than that. Now I enjoy and love living the life that I live now, and I want to be a representation of that. That through death of old ways, a new life has been born.
I agree. No, I think that's a very powerful way to look at it because your story can show a lot of people like, hey, you had no hope at one time. You thought,
Hmm.
no, I'm not ever changing. This is where I'm at. This is where I'm stuck. This is what I'm going to be doing. But fast forward to now, man. It's just a whole different person than what you were, man. And it's just it's hard to imagine like just to see you out there doing that and stuff. But it is for a lot of different people, and seeing these guys that were criminals and stuff that, when they change their life and have a different mindset and that, you just you can't see it, but then, it's just that just shows how much change they have made in their life. So, I
Hmm.
appreciate you coming on this podcast today and sharing your story. Do you have any final words or anything you want to throw in there, man?
No, I mean, like I said, I appreciate you reaching out, and I, as soon as you told me what the podcast was about and what you're about, it was like, what, that's a perfect opportunity, because it's not publicized that people with past can change,
Right.
and it should be,
I know.
because not everybody stays with the same roots. So definitely an opportunity for me. So I appreciate you having me and reaching out to me. I'm glad you got back to me and we set this up, and hopefully you get some likes on this, and people really understand what it takes. You put in the work, you can get the work.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, thank you everyone for watching today's episode, and thank you again, Hondo, for coming on, man.
Right on, brother. Thank you.
Hondo has one hell of a story. He is another guest that I've had on that is living proof change is possible. When all hope was abandoned, he still kept pushing and pushing until he finally made the right change. Please comment any key takeaways that you got from this interview with Hondo. Please share it with anyone that you think will enjoy this type of content. All these interviews that I do, please be sure to share them, because it does go a long way and helps me get my videos in front of new people. Please don't forget to give the video a like button if you enjoyed it. Hit the notification button if you want to get notified when my next podcast drops. helps. And again, please don't forget to hit subscribe if you enjoyed today's podcast. At the end of this video, a playlist will pop up of all the other interviews I've done in the past. Thank you again so much for watching, and of course, we'll see you on the next one.